The California sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting a warm golden hue over the suburban streets. Lily, sitting on the soft, cream-colored couch in her living room, looked down at her swollen belly, feeling the familiar flutter of her baby moving inside. She was only a few weeks away from her due date, and every moment seemed like it was getting more real, more intense. The nursery was finally set up, the baby clothes neatly folded, and her husband, Mark, had been right by her side through all the preparations. Or so she thought. Mark and Lily had been married for 3 years. They had met in college and quickly fallen in love, or at least that's how it felt in the beginning. She had always admired his ambition, his charm, and the way he seemed to have everything figured out. He was a good provider, a man who worked hard, and she felt lucky to be his partner. But now, as the days counted down to their baby's arrival, Lily couldn't shake a growing unease. Something didn't feel right. It all started when Mark got an email about a long-planned family trip to Florida with his parents. It had been organized for months, and his mother, Susan, had been eagerly pushing for it. Mark was always caught between his wife and his family. His parents were loving but overbearing, especially Susan. She had never hidden her disapproval of Lily, often making comments about her career choices or questioning her readiness for motherhood. "Mark, are you sure this is the right time for a trip?" Lily had asked a week before, her voice a little shaky. "I mean, with the baby coming and everything, don't you think we should be focused here?" Mark had smiled at her, a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "It'll be fine, babe. It's just a week. I'll be back before the baby arrives. We've been planning this for so long." "I know, but I'm going to need you here. You promised me you'd be here for the birth." Lily felt the knot in her stomach tighten as she spoke. She wasn't sure if it was hormones or something deeper, but she felt something pulling at her chest, a sense of dread she couldn't ignore. Mark had brushed it off, like he always did with her concerns. "Lily, it's just a trip with my parents. I'll be home in plenty of time. Plus, it'll give you a break. You'll be fine on your own." It wasn't the first time Lily had felt like Mark prioritized his family over her, but she had always pushed those feelings down. She tried to convince herself it was just her overreacting, but as the days drew closer to the trip, something felt wrong. The morning Mark left for Florida, she kissed him goodbye, her stomach in knots. He reassured her once again that he would be back in plenty of time. But even as he said those words, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that she was being left behind, once again playing second fiddle to his family's needs. "I'll be fine," she told herself, trying to convince her reflection in the mirror as she wiped a tear away. "This isn't a big deal. He'll be back. Everything will be fine." The days passed in a blur. Lily's due date came and went, and there was no sign of labor. Still, she felt more uncomfortable, her body aching with the growing weight of the baby. She tried to stay calm, telling herself that Mark would be home any minute now. But the clock kept ticking, and still, no sign of him. The night before her labor began, Lily had felt a strange sense of unease. Her contractions were mild but consistent. She called Mark, but the phone rang for several minutes before he finally picked up. "Hey, babe, I think I'm having some contractions," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Maybe you should come home, just in case." Mark sounded distracted. "I'll be there as soon as I can. But I'm out to dinner with Mom and Dad, and I just don't want to miss this time with them." "Are you sure it's the real thing?" Lily felt a sharp pang of frustration. She had never asked him to leave his parents for her, but this was different. This was their child. This was her moment, and she needed him. But Mark's response had left her feeling even more alone. "I'm not sure," she said, biting her lip. "But I just need you to be here. Please." "I'll be back soon, don't worry," Mark reassured her. "I'm sure it's not happening yet. Just stay calm, and I'll be home when I can." But as she hung up the phone, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that she was on her own. The pain grew worse, more intense, and she tried to breathe through it, hoping Mark would return in time. But as the night stretched on, Lily realized she couldn't wait any longer. The contractions were too close, too strong. She needed to get to the hospital. With her heart pounding, she grabbed her bag, barely able to walk from the pain. She fumbled with the keys to the car, her hands shaking. Her phone rang again. It was Mark. "Hey, I just spoke to my parents. We're leaving in a few minutes. I'll be back before you know it. Don't worry, okay?" Lily's breath hitched. She was in pain. She was alone. And he was still out there, miles away, enjoying dinner with his parents. "I don't know if I can wait that long," she said, the tears welling in her eyes. "I don't think I can. Just wait a little longer. I'll be home soon." But Lily was already in the car, her stomach twisted with both fear and frustration. She drove herself to the hospital, every bump in the road a sharp reminder that she was doing this alone. She didn't know how she made it through the next few hours, but she did. It wasn't until she parked the car outside the hospital that the pain became unbearable. She wanted to scream, to call Mark and tell him to come home, but she didn't want to sound weak, didn't want him to feel guilty. So, she sat in the car, holding her stomach, waiting for him to arrive. The minutes stretched into what felt like hours. The baby was coming. She could feel it. But Mark wasn't there. He had left her alone, and now she was on her own, delivering their child in a hospital parking lot, waiting for a husband who was miles away. And in that moment, Lily realized something she hadn't fully understood before. Mark had made a choice. And that choice, the one to prioritize his family over her, had left her with more than just an empty seat in the car. It had left her questioning everything she thought she knew about love, loyalty, and family. But the baby was coming. And as she pushed through the pain, Lily realized that even without him, she would survive. She would get through this. She had to. Lily sat in the sterile hospital room, staring at the baby in her arms, the tiny, perfect life she had just brought into the world. Her heart was filled with love for her newborn son, but there was a hollowness inside her, a void that couldn't be filled by the infant she held so tenderly. Her mind kept drifting back to the moments before, when she had been left alone in the car, excruciating pain, helpless and abandoned. Mark had promised he would be there, but instead, he had chosen his family's vacation over being by her side, the night their child was born. The baby's soft cries broke her out of her thoughts, pulling her back into the present. She rocked him gently, cooing softly, but the sadness lingered. How could Mark have done this to her? How could he have chosen a trip with his parents over the birth of his own child? Her phone buzzed on the table beside the bed, breaking the silence. It was a message from Mark. "Hey, babe. I just got done with dinner. We're heading back to the hotel soon. I know you're probably feeling overwhelmed, but I'll be back tomorrow. Just hang in there. I love you." Her eyes burned as she read the words. She could feel the anger rising within her. Was this his idea of support? Of reassurance? She had been begging him to come home, telling him how much she needed him, and now, hours later, he was texting as if nothing had happened. As if she hadn't just endured the most painful experience of her life, alone. A nurse entered the room, interrupting her thoughts. "How are you feeling?" she asked with a kind smile. "I'm fine," Lily said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Just tired." The nurse nodded. "That's understandable. You've been through a lot. We'll give you some time to rest, but feel free to call us if you need anything. Congratulations, by the way. He's beautiful." Lily gave a small smile, her eyes still locked on her son. As the nurse left, the weight of the silence filled the room again. The baby was perfect, but everything else felt like it was falling apart. She couldn't shake the feeling that Mark's absence was a reflection of how little he understood her needs, how little he truly cared. Hours passed. The hospital room was quiet except for the occasional beeping of machines and the soft sound of her baby's breathing. She tried to rest, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the image of Mark walking away, heading to his family's trip, leaving her to face the birth of their child without him. She couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay. The more she thought about it, the more the betrayal burned within her. She had always been the supportive wife, the one who always put Mark's needs first. But this was unforgivable. The person who should have been there for her, who promised to be there, had left her when she needed him the most. By the time Mark finally called, it was late in the evening, hours after their son had been born. Lily picked up the phone, her hands shaking. "Hey, babe," Mark's voice came through, bright and casual. "I just got back to the hotel. I'm so sorry I couldn't be there for the birth. I hope everything went okay. How are you feeling?" Lily took a deep breath. This was it. The moment she had been dreading. But she couldn't stay silent anymore. "Mark," she said, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. "You weren't there. You left me alone. I had to give birth in a parking lot, alone. And now you're calling me like everything is fine. How could you do this?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Lily's chest tightened with every passing second. She could hear Mark shifting on the other end, probably regretting the careless words he'd said. But that wasn't enough anymore. I didn't mean to hurt you, Lily," Mark stammered. "It wasn't like I wanted to go, but my parents, they really wanted me to go. I didn't think it would be that big of a deal." "A big deal?" Lily repeated, her voice rising with anger. "You didn't think it was a big deal that you weren't there for the birth of your own child? That you left me, in pain, to go on a vacation with your parents? I needed you, Mark. I needed you, and you chose them over me. I'm sorry, okay? I was just trying to balance everything. It was so last minute." "Stop making excuses," Lily cut him off, her voice trembling now with emotion. "You made a choice, Mark. You chose them over me. Over us. I didn't ask for you to go. You could have stayed. But you didn't." The silence on the other end felt suffocating. Lily gripped the phone tighter, wishing she could reach through the screen and make him understand just how deep the wound ran. "I'll be there tomorrow," Mark finally said, his voice quieter now. "I promise." But Lily didn't believe him. She wasn't sure she believed anything he said anymore. "I don't need you to be here now," she replied, her voice colder than it had ever been. "What I need is for you to understand what you've done. You weren't there when I needed you most, Mark. And that's something I'll never forget." She hung up the phone before he could respond. Her heart felt like it was being squeezed in her chest, the weight of his betrayal too much to bear. She had wanted to believe that things would be different, that he would be there when it mattered most. But now, as she looked down at her baby, her precious son, she realized that it wasn't just Mark who had broken her heart, it was the reality that she couldn't depend on him in the way she had always hoped. As the hours dragged on, Lily felt more and more disconnected from Mark. She had always made excuses for him, always tried to understand his side of things. But this time, the hurt was too deep. This time, there was no going back. By the time Mark arrived the next day, Lily was no longer the woman he had left behind. She had been through too much on her own, and it had changed her. The Lily who had once blindly supported him, who had put his needs ahead of her own, was gone. In her place was someone who would no longer tolerate being treated as an afterthought. She didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was certain, she would never let him break her like this again. The day Mark returned from his trip, the atmosphere in their home was heavy with silence. Lily could hear the familiar sound of his car pulling into the driveway, but instead of feeling relief, she felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. She wasn't sure what she had been expecting, but it certainly wasn't this detached, sorry excuse of an apology that he had tried to offer over the phone. Lily had spent the night reflecting on everything that had happened, and while she had spent the first few hours after his call crying, now all she felt was exhaustion from the pain, the betrayal, and from keeping up the facade of a happy marriage for so long. She sat on the edge of their bed, cradling their newborn son in her arms, staring at the door, waiting. The small crib was beside her, where the baby slept soundly, unaware of the emotional chaos surrounding him. Lily's heart ached for the boy she had just brought into the world, a perfect little being, full of promise. But how could she protect him from a father who had already proven himself unreliable? How could she raise him in an environment where she could no longer trust the person she had once believed would stand by her side through everything? When Mark stepped inside, he looked hesitant, almost sheepish. His eyes found hers, but she couldn't bring herself to smile at him. His presence was no longer comforting, it was like a shadow that threatened to smother the small spark of hope that had once filled her heart. "Lily," Mark said softly, as he stood in the doorway. "Can we talk?" Lily didn't respond right away. She simply stared at him, feeling the weight of the last few days pressing down on her. She wasn't sure what to say anymore. How do you talk to someone who has broken your trust in the most fundamental way possible? How do you find the words for someone who didn't even consider you when it mattered the most? "Please," he added, stepping closer. "I know I've messed up, and I'm sorry. I should have been there, I should have dropped everything for you." Lily looked at him now, her voice quiet but firm. "You're sorry, Mark?" she asked, her tone sharp. "You're sorry because you got caught? Or because you've realized you left me alone to give birth? Do you even understand what you did? Do you understand how you made me feel?" Mark opened his mouth to speak, but Lily cut him off, her anger beginning to surface. "No, don't even try to explain yourself. I don't want to hear it. For once, I don't need you to fix this. I just need you to understand that what you did was unforgivable. You left me to face the birth of our child alone. You prioritized a vacation with your parents over being here for your wife, for us. You broke my heart, Mark." She paused, her chest rising and falling with the rawness of the emotion pouring out of her. She had kept all of this in for so long, convinced that things would improve, that Mark would come through for her. But now, as she looked at him, she realized something profound: he would never change. This wasn't just a one-time mistake. This was who he was. Mark's face fell as he took in her words, the weight of the truth hitting him hard. He moved closer, kneeling beside the bed. His hand reached out toward her, but Lily instinctively pulled back. She didn't want his touch right now. She didn't want his empty apologies. "I never meant to hurt you," he said, his voice hoarse. "I love you, Lily. I do. Please, don't do this. I'll make it up to you. I'll do whatever it takes." Lily stared at him, her eyes narrowing. "You can't make this up. You can't fix something that's been broken for so long. This isn't just about what happened in that parking lot. This is about everything. The way you've always put your family before me. The way you've always made me feel small. I'm done, Mark. I'm done being second to your parents, second to anything." Mark's face went pale, the realization hitting him full force. He had always believed that no matter what, Lily would forgive him, that she would always be there to pick up the pieces of their life. But now, as he looked into her eyes, he saw something he hadn't seen before, a woman who had grown tired of waiting for him to change, tired of accepting less than she deserved. Lily shook her head, her resolve strengthening. "I don't know what's next for us, Mark. But right now, I need space." I need time to think. You've made your choices, and now I need to make mine. He opened his mouth to say something else, but Lily held up a hand. No more excuses. No more apologies. Just leave. I need time to think about what's best for me, for my son. The words stung, but Lily didn't care. She had spent too much time caring for Mark's feelings, walking on eggshells for fear of rocking the boat. But not anymore. Not now. It was time for her to put herself first. Mark hesitated, his face a mixture of shock and regret. He didn't want to leave, but he could see that Lily was no longer the woman who would quietly accept his mistakes. She had finally found her voice, and it terrified him. I'll go, Mark said quietly, standing up and walking toward the door. Before he left, he turned back to look at her, his expression one of defeat. I'm sorry, Lily. I never wanted to hurt you. Lily didn't respond. She just watched him leave, the door clicking shut behind him with a finality that echoed in her chest. For the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of peace. She had finally stood up for herself, and it had felt like a small victory, a step toward reclaiming her life. The next few days passed in a blur. Lily took care of their son, focusing all her energy on him, and began to process everything that had happened. The anger that had surged within her in the aftermath of Mark's abandonment slowly began to morph into something else. It wasn't just hurt, it was clarity. She realized that she no longer needed Mark to feel whole. She had her son, and that was all that mattered now. But something else lingered within her, a feeling of unresolved anger. She wasn't sure yet what she wanted from Mark, but she knew one thing for sure: she couldn't let him off the hook so easily. Not when everything he had done had hurt her so deeply. Lily wasn't ready to forgive him, not yet. And as she looked down at her son, she realized that perhaps the greatest revenge she could get would be living a life without him, one where she finally got to put herself and her child first. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming her own happiness, on her own terms. She would make sure Mark understood the consequences of his actions. But for now, she would focus on the present, on the life she was building, on the family she was creating, one where betrayal had no place. The days after Mark left were the hardest of Lily's life. She spent every waking moment taking care of their newborn son, feeling a weight settle on her shoulders. The physical exhaustion from childbirth was nothing compared to the emotional toll of what Mark had done. But amidst the chaos of sleepless nights and diaper changes, something began to shift in Lily. She realized that her pain was not just from Mark's abandonment, it was from the realization that she had been allowing herself to be treated as less than what she deserved for far too long. This time, she wouldn't let him get away with it. The invitation to the family gala had come a few days after Mark's departure. It was a formal affair, one of those high society events that his parents threw every year to showcase their wealth and status. Mark's mother, Susan, had already called Lily to ask if she would be attending, but Lily had dismissed the idea immediately. After everything that had happened, the thought of facing Mark's family, especially Susan, was too much. But then, something inside her snapped. She could already feel the weight of her decision, like a seed sprouting in her chest. If she didn't go, Mark would continue to believe he could get away with everything. If she didn't confront him now, she would let this anger, this betrayal, fester forever. But she would go on her terms. She wasn't going to beg for forgiveness. She wasn't going to stand by quietly as if nothing had happened. Lily was going to walk into that gala, face Mark and his family, and let them see exactly what they had done to her. The evening of the gala arrived, and Lily found herself staring at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, unsure of how she had arrived at this point. She had put on a beautiful, simple black dress that made her feel confident, elegant, and in control, a stark contrast to the vulnerable woman who had been left in a car alone to give birth. She had spent hours getting ready, not just for the event, but for herself. She wasn't doing this for Mark or for anyone else. She was doing it because she needed to take back control. Mark wasn't home when she left, and she didn't plan on waiting for him. She knew he'd be attending the gala, probably with his parents, playing the part of the dutiful son, the successful businessman. It made her sick to think of how everything was always about appearances with his family. But Lily had decided she wasn't going to play that game anymore. She was done hiding. As she walked into the grand hall of the venue, Lily was hit with the overwhelming smell of perfume and the sound of champagne glasses clinking. The gala was in full swing, the glint of crystal chandeliers overhead reflecting off the guests in their formal attire. But it all seemed so foreign to her now. She used to be part of this world, the world that valued status over people, wealth over love. But not anymore. She made her way through the crowd, her heart pounding in her chest. For a moment, she considered leaving. She could turn around, leave the gala, and avoid the confrontation. But something in her told her that would be a mistake. If she walked away now, she would never forgive herself. Then, she saw them. Mark, standing beside his parents. His mother, Susan, was practically glowing with pride as she spoke to a group of their friends. Mark looked the same as he always did, confident, composed, wearing the mask of a man who had everything under control. Lily's blood boiled. There he was, smiling and laughing, acting as if nothing was wrong. It was as if she didn't matter. But Lily didn't flinch. She walked directly toward them, her steps purposeful and deliberate. As she approached, Mark's eyes landed on her, and for the first time, she saw a flicker of surprise, maybe even guilt, in his gaze. But it wasn't enough. She needed more than that. "Lily," Mark said, his voice faltering as he came toward her, his hand reaching out. "What are you doing here?" Lily didn't answer. Instead, she turned to face his parents, her eyes locked on Susan's. The woman who had always been a passive aggressor in her life, the one who had made every effort to undermine Lily's confidence, was standing before her now, expecting Lily to be her usual compliant self. But she wasn't. Lily finally spoke, her voice carrying across the room, commanding the attention of the small crowd around them. "You've all been living in a bubble," she said, her eyes cold as she faced Mark's parents. "A bubble where you can pretend everything's perfect. But I'm not going to let you keep pretending anymore." Mark's face hardened, and Susan's smile faltered as she glanced around, clearly uncomfortable with the public confrontation. The murmurs of the other guests began to swell, but Lily didn't care. This wasn't about them. This was about her. Turning to Mark, Lily's voice dropped, but it was no less powerful. "I was in labor, Mark. In a car. Alone. You chose your family over me, over our son. You made me feel insignificant, like I didn't matter. And I'm done letting you treat me like that." The room grew silent, the murmurs of the crowd fading away as everyone turned their attention to the couple. Mark's face twisted in disbelief, his mouth opening and closing, unable to come up with a defense. "I didn't ask you to go, Mark. I didn't ask for this. I asked you to be here with me. But you chose your parents' trip over me. Over your son," she continued, her voice shaking with the force of her emotion. "So, don't stand here and pretend to be the loving husband. You don't get to play the part anymore." Lily paused for a moment, letting the weight of her words sink in. Mark looked as if he had been slapped, the shame washing over him. But it wasn't enough. It was far too late for apologies now. Turning to the guests around her, Lily added, "I wanted everyone to know who Mark really is, what he really did. He abandoned me when I needed him the most, and for that, I will never forgive him." There was a long pause. No one spoke. No one moved. The silence was deafening. Finally, Lily turned on her heel, walking away from Mark and his family, leaving them in the middle of the gala. She didn't need to look back. She had said what she needed to say. She had exposed the truth, and now it was up to Mark to live with it. As Lily stepped outside into the cool night air, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. For the first time in what felt like forever, she felt free. She had taken back her power, and it didn't matter what Mark or anyone else thought anymore. She had walked into that room a woman who had been betrayed, and she walked out as someone who had reclaimed her dignity. And as the cool breeze blew through her hair, Lily realized something. This was the beginning of her new life. No more second-guessing. No more putting herself last. From now on, everything was about her. And nothing, not even Mark's regret, could take that away from her. Lily didn't wait for Mark to come running after her. She didn't need him to apologize or beg for her forgiveness. For the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of control, a feeling she hadn't had since before the pregnancy, before the wedding, before she had let herself become lost in Mark's world and his family's expectations. Tonight had been the turning point, and she had no intention of going back to the woman who had put her own needs last. She walked out of the gala into the cool night air, the evening breeze offering a small reprieve from the storm that had raged inside her. Her phone buzzed in her purse, and she pulled it out to see a series of messages from Mark. "Lily, please listen to me. I know I messed up, but I'm here now. Let's fix this. I'll make it right, I promise." Her fingers hovered over the screen as she stared at the message, but there was no need to respond. She had heard it all before. How many times had he promised to change, to be better? How many times had she believed those words only to end up disappointed again? Not this time. The silence between them had been broken, but it wasn't just about words anymore. It was about actions, and Mark had proven time and time again that his actions didn't match his promises. Instead of replying, Lily put the phone back in her purse and kept walking. She didn't need to explain herself any further. She had already done that, in front of everyone who needed to hear it. As she arrived at her car, she paused for a moment to gather herself, taking a deep breath before slipping into the driver's seat. Her hands were still shaking, but not from fear. This wasn't about fear anymore. It was about strength. She was doing this for herself. For her son. The next few weeks were a blur of change. Mark tried calling, texting, even showing up at her doorstep, but Lily stood firm. She wasn't going to let him worm his way back into her life with his hollow promises. Every time he came by, she met him with coldness, her resolve unwavering. She had been there for him through everything, his family's drama, his career demands, his emotional distance. But now, it was her turn to take charge of her own life. Lily knew she couldn't keep living in this emotional limbo. She had to find a way forward, for herself and her son. She didn't want her child growing up in a household where love was conditional, where she would always have to fight for attention and respect. She wanted to be the kind of mother who could teach her son what real love looked like, love that didn't come with strings attached, love that didn't require sacrifice at the expense of your own well-being. Her son's laughter one evening as she fed him his bottle filled her heart with an overwhelming sense of purpose. He was everything she needed, her reason for getting up every day, her reason for fighting. And she was going to be the best mother to him, no matter what. As the weeks turned into months, Lily began to find her footing again. She returned to work part-time, something she hadn't done since the pregnancy. She found joy in her independence, in making decisions for herself, without anyone's approval or judgment. She started meeting new people, making new friends, and even began pursuing a hobby she had long abandoned, painting. The act of creating something, of expressing herself through colors and shapes, became a form of therapy, a way for her to reclaim the parts of herself she had buried under the weight of her relationship with Mark. But as she moved forward, there were moments of doubt. What if she had made the wrong choice? What if Mark had really changed? What if their son grew up without a father? But then she would look at her son, the beautiful, perfect boy who was thriving under her care, and she knew she was doing the right thing. She was doing what was best for him, for them both. And deep down, she understood something important. Her son didn't need a father who would only show up when it was convenient. He needed a mother who could show him what strength, resilience, and unconditional love looked like. And that was something she could give him, no matter what. One evening, as Lily sat on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Mark showed up again. His face looked older somehow, the weight of their separation and his mistakes etched deeply into his features. He stood a few feet away from her, hesitant, almost as if he was afraid to get too close. "Lily," he began, his voice quiet, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about everything. And I know I've hurt you in ways I can never fix. But I want to make things right. I want to be there for you. I want to be the man you deserve." Lily didn't immediately respond. She just watched him, feeling a mixture of sadness and indifference. She had been here before, listening to his promises, watching him make mistakes, then promising to change. But those promises had always fallen flat. There was a time when she would have given him another chance, a time when she would have believed in him again. But that time had passed. "I don't need you to fix things anymore," she said calmly, her voice steady. "I don't need your apologies. I've spent too many years waiting for you to change, and I'm done with that. I'm building a life for me and my son now, and you're not a part of that." Mark's face fell, but there was a quiet understanding in his eyes. He knew what this meant. He knew that she was finally letting go, not out of anger, but out of necessity. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said quietly. "But I hope one day, you'll see that I'm sorry. I'll always be here if you need anything." Lily nodded, her heart heavy but resolute. "I don't need anything from you, Mark. I'm doing just fine on my own." With that, Mark turned and walked away, leaving Lily standing in the fading light, a quiet sense of peace settling over her. She had done it. She had stood up for herself, confronted the past, and walked away from the man who had failed her in ways she could never forget. But now, she was free. As she watched the sun disappear below the horizon, she finally allowed herself to feel the weight of the last few months lifting off her shoulders. She had let go of the pain, the disappointment, and the fear of being alone. And now, she could breathe again. Her son cooed from inside the house, and Lily smiled as she walked toward the door. She didn't need a partner to feel whole. She didn't need validation from anyone else. She was enough, just as she was. And with that, she closed the door behind her, stepping into the future with her head held high. A new chapter had begun, one she would write herself.